Am I the astronaut for telling my daughter she is a spoiled brat and doesn't know what a hard life is? Trigger warning, abuse. Shite. All right, here we go. Okay, so background, I am 40 male married to a 38 female. We met in high school. Wife's parents are terrible. Completely abused her until she moved out at 18. My wife has always tried to be a good mother and break the abusive cycle. We both have good jobs. They want for nothing. We tried not to spoil them. They have chores, know their manners, they're good kids in school. So my daughter came home one day and asked us to go visit her grandparents' house. We said yeah because we thought she meant my parents, but no, she meant my wife's. My wife immediately said no. Then I backed her and said they will have no part in their lives. She said I was overreacting and that she deserves to meet all of her grandparents, and we were being selfish. My wife was diagnosed with PTSD, and she still sees a therapist due to all the bullshit that she went through. It really annoyed me, and I sent my daughter to her room. I talked to my wife and said that I should tell her what happened, so she understands why we're saying no, that her parents aren't good people. My wife was reluctant but agreed as long as she didn't have to be there so she wasn't triggered. I went to my daughter's room the next day and I talked to her. I said, look, I understand you're upset, but we are not saying no just to say no. There's a lot that you do not understand, but I'm going to explain it so that maybe you understand more. Your mom's parents were abusive. She was humiliated daily, screamed at, and terrorized since she was 6 years old. Every moment and holiday was ruined by fear, and she almost died on Thanksgiving Day due to her stepfather. That your mom and her sister still suffer from the trauma, and that we will never have a relationship with them, and I hope that she understands now. Something along the lines of that. I told her and thought she understood. Anyway, it was my wife's birthday a week ago. She doesn't like celebrating, honestly, but does it for us. It was actually a really great day. My wife's sister and our 2 children and my whole family were there celebrating at our house. Until around 7 at night, a knock at my door and my daughter went to answer the door. We figured it was a friend of hers. When she came right back into the living room, it was my shitty mother-in-law and father-in-law. Oh no! Like, oh no, Scoops, like what are we gonna do? Like, don't give them any sandwiches. My wife and her sister both frozen, and they came in like they owned the place, trying to be buddy-buddy. My wife asked them in a timid voice and said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "Our granddaughter invited us." She then tried to speak up more and tell them that they needed to go, but they wouldn't. I got up and went between my wife and them and said to them, "Leave. You are unwanted here." My daughter really stood up for them and said that she talked to them and that mom is just exaggerating what happened. You little... And that they were good parents. That's when my father-in-law said, "That's right, whatever we did to you ungrateful kids, you deserved." Gonna run out of red flags tonight, ladies and gentlemen. That pissed my wife off and she shouted to leave. I went up with my dad and we were going to push him out, but he's 6'4", 250 pounds, at least got us off him. And he pushed my wife into the wall. Her head hit straight back at the wall, so she had to go get stitches. As soon as that happened, me and my dad and brother forced him outside and said they needed to leave or we would press charges. Her mom kept saying that she was a good mom and that my wife was dramatic and she just had bad children. Anyway, my mother took my wife to the hospital because we were still trying to get them to leave the driveway. My mother brought her there and back once they left completely. My wife didn't say anything the rest of the night besides thanking my mother for the ride, then going to our room. Her sister was really freaked out too and left right after hugging my wife. My children were in the living room and I told my son and my younger daughter to go into their rooms. I needed to speak to their sister. I admit I lost it. I screamed. I said she was so selfish and I couldn't believe she did that. That she still got into contact after I explained what they did to her mom when she was younger, how I was honestly disgusted with her. She started to cry and say she genuinely thought I was exaggerating and it would be good for them to get together. She said she got in touch with them on social media and they seemed great, how they made everything seem not as bad, and she said she didn't think that they could be that evil and be related to us. I told her there are evil people everywhere. We have just tried to shield her away because parents are supposed to protect their kids. I was so upset. I genuinely wanted to call her an idiot, but I didn't. But every move my wife did to move past her trauma was demolished by this idiotic decision. My daughter apologized and I said, sorry doesn't cut it. Her actions risked her mother's health and everyone's safety. My wife talked to her and said that she no longer trusts her and how those are the consequences of her action. For meddling in something that was not her business to meddle with. She has no more phone and no more visiting friends until she earns that trust again. And we could add a punishment if we see fit. I've comforted my wife as much as I can, but she's not great. While I honestly think I went too easy on my daughter, I figured I should have another opinion. Am I the astronaut? There's an edit and an update, so we'll get into it. Edit. To clear the timeline, my daughter sought them out after I told her what happened during her mom's childhood. I asked, and she said she reached out first as well. My daughter is 16 years old. I think it probably started sooner than that, earlier than that. Update, more information. We did make a report and we are pressing charges, and we'll be doing everything we can to get a restraining order. We didn't call the police because we live in a secluded area and it would take too long for them to get here. We deleted all of my daughter's social media, and I did look at her text between her and her in-laws. She reached out first and kept pursuing them. There were 3 messages before that my in-laws ignored until they eventually responded. Also, that was not the first conversation we had with her about my wife's parents. It was just the first in detail conversation. I told her specific scenarios and events that happened without getting too graphic, but she and my other children always knew that their grandparents were bad. We had multiple talks growing up when we first started to explain why they only had one set of grandparents, unlike most of their friends, but we never said anything in specific details about the actual events, only that their grandparents were bad people who hurt their mother and aunt a lot. She told me she's doing her best and feels bad for her distancing herself from her daughter, but she's just extremely hurt. My wife's going into more therapy sessions than she normally does, and we have set an appointment for my daughter to see one as well, and we will try family therapy to get back to normal. Anyway, I did not think this would get so many views. Thank you all for the advice. Holy shite. Hubby, Dad here. You did well. You did well. All things considered, with this extremely volatile situation, you did the right thing. Now, the specific question you're asking here is, am I the astronaut for telling my daughter that she's a spoiled brat and doesn't know what a hard life is? I didn't hear you say that. Are you wanting to say that? I don't think you need to say anything more than what you've already said. The fact that you're getting her into therapy and then you plan on doing family therapy to further expand on this is the right thing to do. I don't think you need to beat this into the ground to make your point. I think therapy will help make that point. Her mom distancing herself from her will make that point. That will be a lot of pain that will create change. For a 16-year-old girl, for her mom to distance herself from her because of something she did that caused her mom emotional trauma and damage and pain, that's going to be pain. Hopefully enough to change what happened. What I'm curious about that we don't know is what triggered this. What triggered the need, that first request to go over to her grandparents, and she meant her mom's parents. What caused that? Something happened. And that's why I thought grandparents reached out first and it had happened earlier. Something happened for her to be like, you know what? I've heard that they're bad people my entire life, but I really, really want to meet them. I really want to get to know them. What happened that caused that? Maybe a friend went through a similar situation. Maybe a friend said something. Like, it's really messed up that you don't know them. Have you ever thought about reaching out? Maybe you should reach out. I think you should meet them. Something happened. She saw something. She heard something that made her think, I want to zero in on this topic. And even though I know there's bad shit there, I'm obsessed with this right now. And she got to this obsession point where she ignored all of the warnings, which were in depth, and decided to go ahead and go through it anyway, and then said that she thought her dad was exaggerating. No, not okay. You're 16 years old. I'm not saying that you should know a lot about emotional trauma or you should know about abusive homes or anything. Thank goodness you don't. Thank goodness you don't. But when you are explicitly told no, because they did this really up shit to your mom, they are evil people, and then you still went ahead and did it anyway and brought them over? Kid, I know you're only 16 years old, but damn, you just did a really evil thing to your mom. This was malicious. I know in your 16-year-old grandparent trap Disney ending mind, this was probably like, I'm going to fix this for them. I'm going to be the hero of the family. They're going to show up and everybody's going to get along and then we're going to have one big happy family and then I'll get more presents for Christmas and everything is going to be great. World doesn't work like that, unfortunately. Thank goodness. At 16 years old, this is the first time she's facing it. I want to say she's not going to make this mistake again. The fact that she was explicitly told in detail what happened and why, and thought her dad was just exaggerating and then went ahead and did it anyway, puts a ding in that confidence, obviously. And yes, she's got to earn this trust back because she did it knowingly. So make her earn it back and go through therapy to help, because this is a deep issue that you can't handle yourself.